Hey everybody, in this video we are going to talk about some details in graphs that we find on the graphing calculator. So first we are going to graph this function, and we're going to list an XY table, and we're going to label some items on this graph. So our equation we'll put in our calculator. So in y equals, we've got negative x cubed minus 2x squared plus 2x plus 1. And that's what our graph looks like. Now, to graph this precisely, we're going to look at the XY table. Okay, so I've got a table that goes from x values of -3 up to 3. I've got an output here that I'm definitely not going to be able to graph, so I'm going to scroll up 1, and I'm not going to be able to graph that either. So I think I can graph x's from -3 up to 2. So I'm going to copy down that XY table here. So we're going from -3 all the way up to an input of 2. And our outputs, according to the calculator, were 4, -3, -2, 1, 0, 11. Okay, so on my graph, I'll plot each of these points. Looks like I put a wrong output here, so that should be to -11. Okay, so those are some of the points on the graph. Now, in order to graph this precisely, I think we need to figure out exactly where our minimums and maximums are. So on our graph, I've got a relative minimum right here, and I want to calculate that. So I'm going to use the calculate function, and I'm going to choose option 3 for a minimum. And I'm going to give it a left boundary, so a little left of that minimum, enter, and then right of that minimum, enter again, and it's going to find the minimum between those two arrows. And there's my minimum, -1.72, -3.27. So -1.72, so somewhere around here, -3.27, so right about there. And that I can label, as we're asked. We are asked to label the minimum, so that is a relative minimum. Okay, now let's find the coordinates of the maximum right here. So calculate option 4, a maximum. And I'm going to start with the cursor a little left of that maximum, then move it a little bit right of that maximum, and press enter again, and then one more enter, and the maximum is 0.39, 1.42. So 0.39, somewhere around here, 1.42, somewhere around here. That is a relative maximum. Okay, now I'm going to go down here and actually give the coordinates of that relative maximum. So 0.39, 1.42. And the relative minimum that we located here, I didn't write that down. I should have. It was -1.72, -3.27. Okay. So now we might as well just take care of the absolute minimum and maximum. This graph goes down forever. There is no minimum and no absolute minimum. And it goes up forever. There is no absolute maximum. So for absolute minimum, there is none. For an absolute maximum, there is none. Okay, now we need to finish this graph. So the graph, I'll start at this point right here and go to the right, and then I'll come back to the left. So it looks about like that. I got a little shaky in the middle there. Okay, then on the left side, it looks about like that. So there's our graph, and we have labeled the relative minimum and the relative maximum. So we've taken care of those. We need to label X intercepts. Those are the zeros. So there's an X intercept, there's an X intercept, and there is an X intercept. So we have X intercepts here, here, and another one right here. We are also asked for the y-intercept, so we will label the y-intercept. That is right here. Okay, so x-intercepts, y-intercepts. We've made an xy table. We have graphed. Okay, so the last thing is increasing and decreasing intervals. So as I trace from left to right, it decreases, increases, and decreases again. So we'll start with just listing that it is going to decrease, then increase, then decrease again. Now we need to list the domain for each interval. So it is decreasing until I get right here to this relative minimum where the x value is negative 1.72. So it is decreasing for all x's that are left of or less than negative 1.72. Then it begins to increase, and it increases from this x value of negative 1.72 until it gets to this x value of 0.39. So it is increasing for, forgot to label here, for the domain. So for all x's that are greater than negative 1.72 but less than 0.39. So that is the domain for the increasing interval. Then it begins to decrease again, and it does that forever from the right of 0.39. So it's decreasing for all x's that are right of or greater than 0.39.